So, as I've been saying before, this is a channel that I'm putting together where I'm going to be putting out, as I've been, content on a couple different things. All right. This is a Christian based channel. As a Christian, I've come to find that Christ has done awesome things in my life. All right. And I will say this to you, this is probably something, all right, that people need to think about more, I would say. The fact that basically at some point in time, this party that we call life ends and it's gone. And it would behoove people to really start to think about those matters. Because at some point, and nobody wants to think about it, but at some point it's gone. It's over. So you should really start to think about what happens once that time comes. All right, but I'm going to get into this now because in addition to that, I have strong political feelings, and I feel that I could do a lot of things to kind of, at least I hope I can, through God, to hopefully at least help what's been going on in the world. That's my plan at least. All right, we'll see how that works out. All right, but I'm going to be getting into some things today of a political aspect that I want to touch base on. All right. So my concern with things is that like the Democrat Party is going to pull like the old bait and switch where we're all thinking it's going to be Biden the whole time, and then all of a sudden something happens and they pull in Newsom or maybe even Whitmer, possibly Michelle Obama. I know she said she's not going to run, but you never really know. All right. And that's one of these things where you just don't know, I guess, yet, but we'll see what happens. But understand something. You got to consider the morals of the people that you're dealing with. So the Biden administration, mainly through the DHS Secretary Mayorkas, won't even give Secret Service protection to Robert Kennedy Jr. The dude's a Kennedy. All right. We know their family history. Both his father and his uncle were assassinated. And Mayorkas will not give him Secret Service protection. Doesn't that say something at least to the character of the man and of this administration? Like, there is bona fide death threats that have been made against Kennedy, and they still won't give him protection. Like, why is that? Why is that? Now, they realize that he's like a huge threat to the election in regards to like him pulling votes, and I realize that, but to not give the man Secret Service protection when you know it's warranted, I don't know, that's just like another level in my mind. So that's something to think about when you make these kinds of decisions. And Mayorkas won't even comment. He had no comment when asked about this. All right, so like, you know, something's up with it. It's just messed up. It's just messed up that they wouldn't do that for this guy. All right. Another thing to think about, if that doesn't bother you, is, and I'm surprised this didn't make more headline news, but Antony Blinken, the Secretary of State, very recently made a statement about how the Ukraine will become a member of NATO. Like, Ukraine, he plans to have it be a member nation of NATO. Maybe you don't really fully grasp what that means exactly, but that could potentially have catastrophic consequences. Like, catastrophic consequences. Because, so, all right, a little bit of the history of NATO. NATO was formed in 1949. All right, it's a North Atlantic Treaty Organization. And basically what it does is it's collective defense. So all sorts of countries around the world are always concerned about their defense. They're always worried that they're going to be invaded or whatever. So we created this mutual collective defense treaty amongst a bunch of different countries, which has grown over time. All right. And what that means is if one of the countries that's under the NATO umbrella is attacked, then it's considered an attack on all the member nations, including the US, of which we're like the primary nation in it. Like, we're like the power player in it. Okay. So if you take like Poland as an example, which sits right on the border with Russia, they're real close to Ukraine. If Poland ever got attacked by Russia, we are obligated to go fight, all right, to protect Poland. So we would then be in a hot war with Russia, all right? And so if you think about the consequences of that, it's freaking scary, all right? Because what they think would happen is it would probably escalate to where it would be like, they believe Russia would probably use tactical nuclear weapons, all right? And they hope at least that it would be like a limited exchange. In other words, it would be something that, you know, they would use that tactical nukes which are horrific themselves, all right, but they're sort of like lower grade or lower yielding nuclear weapons, okay? And they hope that that wouldn't escalate, but there's a lot of people that believe it would escalate into like straight up thermonuclear war, where like ICBMs are being launched and everything just goes down, like billions would die, like total catastrophe on a level that's never been seen. All right, so when Blinken recently said how he wants NATO to be a member nation, he wants Ukraine to be a member nation he wants Ukraine to be a member nation of NATO, understand, like that could just put us in a hot war with Russia, like U.S. ground troops in Russia. All right, so if you want your sons and daughters potentially to be fighting on foreign soil, then understand that's what this administration is like pushing towards. That's what they're pushing towards. So I just don't get it when people really like where their heads are at, because when people make the rationale, so to speak, that they're going to not vote for Trump because he's so mean and he says such horrible things, like base it not on that. Like Robert De Niro did that. He bases it just on emotion and how he feels about Trump being an evil person or whatnot. Like, give weight to your argument. Explain your points in detail as to why he is not capable of holding that office. Don't just base it on your emotion and some vague ideas of how he's mean and has done horrible things, etc. Just say what it is. Explain it. All right? Because if you look at performance-wise, like factors in regards to performance, Trump didn't get us into any wars. All right, the Israel-Hamas thing wasn't going on. The Afghanistan thing didn't turn into the complete embarrassing disaster that it became. The Russia-Ukraine war wasn't going on. And if you go into other things like that, if you start to actually think about things where they differ too, Trump has publicly declared he will not support central bank digital currencies, which are a freaking nightmare, potentially just waiting to happen. He publicly said he's not going to support that. Whether or not he honors that statement remains to be seen. I certainly hope he does. But Biden, to my knowledge, hasn't made any kind of statement like that. All right, that's like the CBDC thing is. I'm going to be getting more into that. All right, in future videos, because that's like that's a whole other story. All right. You've got inflation under Biden teetering towards hyperinflation. That wasn't seen under Trump. You know, I could go on and on about these things, about how basically we're just in these wars that seem to be getting worse and worse. The inflation, the economy, the huge divide in the country. Try to base your decision on who you vote for on these factors. Don't base it on emotion. There's too many people do that. Like, line itemize it, look at it, look at the pros and cons of each and what they've actually done, not just on how you feel. Because, folks, nobody wants to be in a hot war with Russia. Nobody wants everything to come crashing down, like in the craziest way that it could ever possibly crash down, and we're like quickly heading in that direction. So it would behoove people to start to think about these things.